Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to start right here. In my opinion, our society is basically busted up into thirds. You have 2/3 of our nation, America, who are on the right side of things. They want the right thing to happen. They long for the truth, of course. They're always interested in it, and they're trying to find it. Some of these truths are uncomfortable for some, and it's in those uncomfortable moments, even among the individuals, again, who are interested in the truth, where you start to see some cracks and you start to see a divide. And this is, I think, evident in basically any environment, certainly work environments and a number of other things. But ultimately, in the end, you would hope that everybody sort of comes back together the more that they learn and the more that they're interested in learning. So let me give you an example when I talk about here just at the beginning of this episode, the thirds of our nation. Again, in my opinion, we're busted into thirds. You have 1/3 of our nation that leans hard left. It could be more than that. I tend to think it's just approximately a third, basically. The vast majority of our nation, however, exists in the other 2/3. These are Jesus-knowing individuals. These are quote-unquote conservatives, all these other labels that you can come up with that would lean, again, politically more toward the right. Again, knowing that the left-right paradigm is corrupt by and large to a great extent, but you have to understand, again, that the different elements are always trying to break into both of those two sides and create even more division. And we know, of course, that's the Jewish lobby and communists, and it's that fraction of individuals, which, as we also know, originates from the hard left, which is why they're always trying to make inroads on the right. So again, 1/3 of our nation sits on the hard left. The other 2/3 tend to sit more toward the right. This is where those 2/3 on the right get divided, in my opinion, and I actually believe that we're consistently seeing more of a divide on the right, I think, than ever before, and that's a good thing. So this is why I say it's busted into thirds, because of that 2/3 on the so-called conservative right, there is half of that, being, of course, one of the 3/3 that fully understands who is responsible for everything that's going on. And I really do believe, again, that it is at least 1/3 of our nation. That is a good thing. I'm talking, again, about individuals who understand the Jewish question, the real history of the wars in the past. They understand the Constitution. They understand the real Revolutionary War. They know about the Great Awakening. They know about a great deal of things, and they're always continuing to learn about this. Even if, of course, that means bouncing around and making loops and circles back in time and being repetitive about particular messaging and so on and so forth. Of the three groups with the most, I would say, positive spinning in that direction, that is the third that continues to spin in a positive direction. And the more it spins, the more it's pulling individuals from those other 2/3, the third that exists among conservatives that, again, are sort of your Fox News watching, Fox News believing individuals, and then, of course, those on the left. And with every revelation that takes place and every example of malfeasance or illegality or whatever it is, people are looking to that 1/3 that is ahead of the curve, and they're saying to themselves, okay, what is it that these individuals have figured out? What is it that these individuals have been reading, listening to, watching? What questions have they been asking? Because that's where most of the momentum exists. Now, again, you listen to, say, for example, an Alex Jones individual or a General Mike Flynn or, some of these other individuals. These individuals sort of sit on the line between the furthest to the right third and then the middle third of that sort of general conservative movement. They exist sort of in that line to, unfortunately, help create that divide between those 2/3 that lean more toward the right. And I think that that's unfortunate, because given the people who follow them, if they really started to talk about the real issues, as, of course, I do here and you're well aware of, and We educate each other on these kinds of things. If they did that, they would bring more individuals, again, more toward our camp. The problem is that they don't want to do that because of course, who owns them, who infiltrates them, who funds them, and all of that nonsense. This, again, continues to be a big problem. But I'm mentioning this at the top of the show only because name-calling gets used on a regular basis regarding, of course, the third of our nation that exists on the far right, that essentially, again, not even politically speaking, we're just always looking for the answer. And we're not afraid of what that answer is, and we aren't afraid of where that leads us, and how many rabbit holes we have to go down in order to figure out what's really going on. Not to mention there's the whole pattern recognition thing, and making sure to not trust government all of the way, and questioning a number of different things. And then, of course, again, with pattern recognition, it's not just with the Jewish question, so to speak, but it's also within government agencies, and knowing who infiltrates these government agencies and who can have influence with particular people in particular positions to make sure that certain information doesn't come out or that certain things aren't brought up. Let me give you an example. As I'm recording this, of course, it's been bouncing around for quite some time, and questions have been asked to Pam Bondi again about what's going to come out regarding any Epstein revelations. We don't need this information. Those of us, again, on the far third, we really don't need this information because we know who's wrapped up in it. We were following along with the Q posts. In fact, there's one that comes to mind that immediately has all of the security footage inside of, again, what is perceived to be the underground temple on Epstein Island. And in one of those photographs, it looks like Nancy Pelosi is standing in this dark hallway wearing street clothes all by herself. She's wearing tennis shoes, shorts, and a shirt. And it looks like her, and she's basically trying to figure out which direction to walk in. Again, I don't know where these tunnels were, but that was the implication. That it isn't about names on a list, it's about people on video doing particular things. And that video evidence that these are not AI deepfakes, that it is legit. And there are good people who have this video, of course, and there are bad people who have this video. But as we know, again, on the far third, I'll call it, that way I don't have to say right or left. I'll just call it the far third, the middle third, and then, of course, the other third. But on the far third, we fully understand that there are individuals attempting to control what names are released or who's involved or who is not. But we already know who's involved. And it's individuals in all of those thirds. It's actors, actresses, it's famous people, it's politicians, it's Alan Dershowitz, it's lots of individuals, as you can probably imagine, because again, those that scream the loudest have the most to hide. The trick is, and this is what those of us on the far third understand, is that you can't get wrapped up in the emotion of when something is going to be released, quote unquote, and when it isn't. Because the only thing that we on the far third want is we want the truth. And we want our fellow peers and our fellow Americans and citizens around the world to know what that truth is. That's it. That's what we want, really. So when something is said to get, that a discussion basically takes place where people are like, well, this will be released, or we're going to find out soon about this. There are multiple motives as to why that happens. Number one, that forces individuals to engage in illegality. When you set a date, and you say, well, on this date, this will be released, or part of this will be released, or we're slow rolling this. That causes, again, individuals to start to panic and look around and say, well, what do we need to get rid of? What evidence can we get rid of? Who do we need to squeeze and pay off to get something? There's that aspect of it. There's also, unfortunately, the other flip side of that coin, which is it's being used as a political pawn and as a political tool to advance someone's political career. Like Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, all of these individuals, again, who are like, well, I've put it in for an inquiry on this, and I haven't heard a response back, and blah, blah, blah. All of that discussion is just political games and nonsense. The truth is stone cold. And if it were released and people understood again, even the most basic levels of the individuals again in the middle third and those on the far third, on the far left third, that if they understood that the very people and the places that they've been supporting most of their lives are not the people that they maybe once thought, certainly again, your average citizen in society, then that can bring down a society. But if your society is built on lies, and it's built on child trafficking and illegality, the best propaganda is the truth. And you have to tell people what that is. The catch, of course, that those of us on the far third, so to speak, already know, it's not government's responsibility to tell us the truth. It's our responsibility as an individual human mind given to us by God that we are the ones who have to figure out what that is. And we can go wherever we want to find it. And it takes time and it takes effort. But once you get there, you can make these connections. And it's not difficult to figure out. You just have to suspend your belief system. So I can continue to take this discussion a lot of different ways. And I might. But I want to read a particular post here that was on X that's very accurate. And I think it summarizes a great deal of this, certainly from a historic standpoint, and what a number of us have been doing here over the last, 8 plus, 9 plus, 10 plus years. Whether individuals knew about any of this or not, it's worth revisiting. This was from 40_HEAD, 40head, at the real 40_head on X. And they said the following. Again, this is an anonymous individual who, again, has been associated, again, with analyzing Q drops and bringing a lot of other truth to bear, as numerous people have over the course of years. It says the following, quote, "Since the first few Q drops hit, a bunch of us took on the role of keeping people's focus tempered and downrange. Each time the aggregators posted on the 4chan, 8chan, or 8kun sites, there were thousands of Anons trying to lead the entire movement in their own self-derived directions. Opinions were posted as truth, theories were posted as fact, and like sheep, well-meaning, red-blooded patriots naively ran with those expectations. And since many of those original beliefs about the drops were incorrect, thousands of Anons became disenfranchised. It didn't matter that the drops stood on their own. The fabled and foiled decodes, quote-unquote, of thousands of drops did not come to fruition, so people walked away." Again, this is what they believe. It goes on, it says, "It was only those of us who realized the entirety of the plan was beyond our understanding and stayed the course. We declared, quote, my captain, unquote, and understood it was not our ship to steer. As we patiently waited, our efforts and consistency has been rewarded in ways that only we can truly appreciate. Why? Because we didn't make this about us. We just kept digging, baking threads, and sharing findings. Today we're sitting right where we expected to be. So many of those early decoders, quote-unquote, are now the grifters we all warn you about today. Those same people are blackpilling like mad, emotionally driven by their need to keep their followers entertained, quote-unquote, instead of educated. But that's never been the drive of those who simply served their nation and kept doing the work. Our edification comes from people waking up and seeing the truth. We don't ask for the following to pat our egos. We ask for it so that you know that you'll at least have some grounded thoughts from the 40,000-foot view. Please be aware of those who promise you that something is coming on a certain date, or that something will happen in a specific way. Q-drops have always been about helping us understand past events to show corruption and guilt. Only in certain drops has Q told us what was coming in the future. and rarely, if ever, did Q provide exacting dates or details. An intelligent military never tells an enemy when their future moves will be made. Q and Trump never telegraph their intents so succinctly that the enemy can prepare for it. So no Anon will know either. We all had to learn that the hard way. They wrap up and they say, take care of your expectations. Be wary of those demanding that Trump or his administration do certain things in a certain way by a certain date. Trump is POTUS, and he's dealing with the entire battle, which is far more than what some social media influencers can imagine. Those angry Anons have limited priorities, drummed up by very narrow fields of view. You will be let down each time if you follow them because Trump is operating at a level way above what has been released to us. Hold the line, stay the course, use common sense. Don't be given to emotionally driven needs for certain events or timelines. And please, please, be careful who you follow. Where we go one, we go all. Unquote. That's well said. And that was a lesson, again, that a lot of us learned a long time ago, is that there's nothing wrong with saying particular things and discussing with individuals certain theories that have taken place over the course of time, and then saying, well, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but there's a lot of chatter right now, and I just want you to understand that there's a lot of chatter, and that this might happen or it might not, or who's to say? It might come and go and nothing happens, and so be it. But it's not about swinging and missing. It's about critically thinking. And again, it's about qualitative reasoning and analysis and examining the chatter that takes place, but also just always digging and arriving at particular conclusions, and hopefully sound conclusions. Let me give you, again, two examples. One theory that's, of course, been bouncing around for a very, very long time is the business of mask wearing. That these politicians are all deceased and you're just watching actors and they're all wearing masks. I don't believe that. Q never brought that up in any posts. A lot of, again, old CIA footage of CIA directors or whomever wearing masks and showing the first George Bush in the Oval Office, a mask that some people will wear in order to gain information and pretend to be somebody else and whatever else. I understand that the mask wearing is a real thing in movies and in Hollywood, and you can make someone up to look a particular way. But I don't believe for a minute that all this talk about, well, Joe Biden's really dead and he's just an actor wearing a mask. I've never subscribed to that. I just haven't. I think it's a declined Joe Biden. That's all. So there are a lot of people, again, always pushing the mask-wearing narrative, and I just never fell for that. There are so many more things to focus on that are far more substantial. Let me give you, again, a second example of even that point. You've heard me, of course, mention before that the reason that Russia went into Ukraine was for two reasons, by and large. It was to reclaim land, of course, that was theirs. And that's one of course, the sort of mainstream stories historically that even Vladimir Putin brought up to Tucker Carlson. But the real reason is because Ukraine has always, of course, been a hotbed of deep state activity, Jewish infiltration. Again, it's former Khazaria, so it's always been that way. Money laundering, child trafficking, drug running, and it's all been done, of course, with the help of our own government, and of course our taxpayers and taxpayer money. With that said, they were creating biological weapons that were being funded by our own government to, of course, ultimately create a false flag attack in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government to then, of course, blame Russia and then start off a war. Or again, someone else was going to get bombed, Russia was going to be blamed, and whatever else. So the question of, did Russia invade Ukraine, quote unquote, that's a question that consistently gets asked where you have inconsistent answers. It's just like when everybody was asking Donald Trump's cabinet nominees whether or not Donald Trump won the 2020 election or lost the 2020 election. They would ask them again, did Joe Biden win the 2020 election? And they all answered the same way because they had a scripted answer, which was Joe Biden was confirmed to be president of the United States and he served as the president of the United States. They never said, yes, Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Why not? Because he didn't. And because there's going to be, if not there already is, of course, an open and finished investigation on all of it. It just hasn't been brought to the public yet. So now I have some audio that I want to play from you that was from February 25th. This was female Senator Communist Tammy Duckworth out of Illinois questioning the Deputy Secretary of Defense nominee, and his name is Stephen Feinberg. Again, at the very beginning of this 5-minute exchange, having to do with whether or not Russia invaded Ukraine. And I want you to listen to his answer, because he knows what I just said, but he's not saying it because he knows what the truth is and he's been told to not tell it for obvious reasons. You drop the truth on these people right now, they'll all flip out. They'll immediately ask for evidence, 1,000 other things will happen, and then all hell breaks loose. So that's why he defers and basically says, well, I'm not privy to talk about this because I don't have all the evidence in front of me and whatever else. This guy knows. He knows that our government was involved with Ukraine in order to, again, start off a false flag war. So here's their exchange. Again, it lasts about 5-6 minutes. It's worth the listen because this sort of proves one of the points that I've been making, is that there's other things going on behind the scenes if you can pick up on the language and if you can pick up on what's actually taking place and what people are saying and, of course, not saying. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Mr. Chairman, I am looking at a Fox News article dated February 24th, 2022, and it features Fox News commentator Pete Hegseth, and the headline is, Russia invades Ukraine in largest European attack since World War II. Can you tell me if Russia invaded Ukraine? Mr. Feinberg? Mr. Hegseth said it.
Yeah, I understand.
It's easy, yes or no. Did they invade Ukraine?
I don't feel that I should publicly comment in the middle of a tense negotiation when I'm not privy to the facts to undermine what potentially...
You're not privy to the fact whether or not Russia invaded Ukraine and started a war that's lasted for 3 years?
I'm not privy to the details of what's going on in the negotiation between Russia and Ukraine, what the sensitivities are, what the president's trying to accomplish. So I'd be afraid to speak out of turn and undermine that. I do have confidence that the president, very skillful at this, and he'll find the right way to help the United States. He's the first guy that brought Russia to the table to even begin a conversation. And
the president is kneeling down to Vladimir Putin. I cannot believe the commander-in-chief of the greatest military on the face of the earth in my lifetime is bowing down to Russia. Let me just change the topic. First, I'd like to echo my colleagues in reinforcing my gratitude for the outstanding service of General Brown, Admiral Franchetti, and the other dedicated leaders who have been unfairly relieved in Trump and Hegseth's politically motivated purge of senior DOD leadership. Let me emphasize, this is not normal. The president does not typically replace nonpartisan generals and flag officers with his preferred choices. In fact, a president seeking to install loyalists among those who are supposed to give him the best military advice is highly concerning and dangerous, both to the good order and discipline of the uniformed services and to the country as a whole. Mr. Feinberg, we had a productive conversation the last time we met, and I actually enjoyed it very much. And I appreciate your frankness during that conversation. And I would like to reiterate my expectations for you should you be confirmed as Deputy Secretary of Defense. Given the utter lack of qualifications of Secretary Hegseth, who himself admitted he was going to hire people smarter than himself to help run the department, you will be the brains behind his leadership and lack of experience. You will be solely responsible for managing the budget and day-to-day operations of the DoD, and so it is imperative that you demonstrate to this committee and to the American people your ability to provide the stability, expertise, and leadership necessary to ensure that Secretary Hegseth doesn't run the department aground with indiscriminate budget cuts and unprecedented, politically motivated, and deeply damaging purges of highly qualified senior DoD leadership. Mr. Feinberg, I have asked this of every nominee before this committee, including yourself in my offices. If President Trump or Secretary Hegseth asked you to do something illegal, will you refuse to obey an illegal order?
I won't obey a legal order, and I don't believe either the Secretary or the President will ask me to do that.
Thank you. Should you observe misconduct that is unbecoming or unlawful, will you report it?
Yes.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, you are it. You are second in command. The responsibility of an executive officer in the military is not only to execute their commander's vision, but to be a voice for his staff and manage the ins and outs of his command. Mr. Hegseth will not manage the minutia. You will. Mr. Feinberg, I would like to know, what are you going to do if the Secretary of Defense orders the pausing of a program critical to the readiness of the services?
I'm sorry, Senator. Orders? What?
A pausing of a program that is critical to the readiness of our military services.
Obviously, I work for the Secretary of Defense. If he does something that I think is a real problem, I will tell him. I will give him my view. Ultimately, I will follow the chain of command and execute what he wants as long as it's lawful. I do think that he will make good decisions. By the way, Senator, I also hope that we can hire, if confirmed, a ton of people, a heck of a lot smarter than yours truly. It's great to bring in talent.
It doesn't take a lot to be smarter than our Secretary of Defense and be more qualified. So that's a low bar indeed. Many of our recent nominees have been talking about hypotheticals, but I'm glad that you're talking about some of the decisions that are being made. Mr. Hegseth has already shown a willingness to make some bad decisions. I mean, he ordered DOD to hastily propose an 8% across the board budget cuts to the budget, while exempting non-mission essential expenses like the DOD's activities on the southwest border. Mr. Feinberg, the DOD isn't a place where we can afford to make mistakes. Are you going to allow an inexperienced team of software company interns to look at our most critical defense programs and make decisions that may impact our national security? Who's going to be at the wheel?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to let Doge in there and start making cuts?
So at DOD, and the Secretary said this, we are responsible for our own people. We are responsible for our actions and policies. DOD is in charge of itself. So no, Doge is not in charge of DOD. We're looking forward to working with Elon Musk. He has great expertise and talent, his great understanding of so many different things in DOD. He'll provide counsel and advice. We looking forward to hearing that. But in the end, DOD is accountable to itself, must make its own decisions for its people and its policy, unless, of course, the president says, I want you guys to do this or that, and then, of course, we're going to do it.
Unless it's illegal.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So let me backtrack. Again, it's what he didn't say regarding Russia-Ukraine where the answer exists. She, of course, runs with the narrative, well, how can you not say that Russia didn't invade Ukraine? It's obvious. Are you unaware of this? And he goes, I'm not privy to say right now because I don't have all of the evidence and I haven't examined everything and I'm not in charge and I haven't been confirmed yet, so I would have to look at everything, but I trust people's judgment on where they're going and there's a negotiation taking place. Again, he's very diplomatic with his answer. And then, of course, she's running with this mainstream narrative of, well, I don't understand why you just can't answer that very basic question because everybody already knows that answer. Well, as it turns out, the answer that she thinks is the answer is not the answer. It's in the middle of what's, again, not being discussed. That's where the answer exists. And right now, that's classified. Until maybe sometime when it becomes declassified and everybody realizes what was really planned for the world. Which, of course, was a massive flippin' war with endless people dying. That was the plan. That was one of the things that was going to happen. And fortunately, the good guys intervened, and one of those good guys, of course, was Vladimir Putin. Why? Because he doesn't want his people to die. He doesn't want his country blamed for something they didn't do at the hands of bad American politicians and NATO and the EU and all those other goofballs who are all communists. He fully understands that. So there is a civil war taking place in the world. It quite literally is communist globalists and then people who are not. And that's happening on a constant basis. But unfortunately, in the middle of all of this, there has to be a keep your enemies, your friends close and your enemies closer kind of thing. Which just very quickly and just very briefly, it leads me to Donald Trump releasing this AI video of what Gaza could look like in the future. And, it's called Trump Gaza in this, kind of tasteless AI video, which it certainly is tasteless. But again, at the same time, it's a random post in the middle of a much larger war. And there's a clip in it, of course, beyond like bearded women and all this other stuff. But it shows again Trump and Netanyahu on the beach in a sand chair drinking on a drink. Again, it's tasteless, but there's also the art of war. And you keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and you engage in a military operation by not telling everybody what you really have planned. You're showing them a movie. You're showing them a perception. You're not really showing them what you actually have planned. So yes, it's multiple dimensional chess. It's always been. It's a military operation. It has to be this way. Again, you can't stand on the mountaintop and yell, "It's Netanyahu and the Jews." You can't scream that at the top of your lungs because people will immediately dismiss it. You do have to slow roll this information. This has to slowly come out. And what's cool is, I think anyway, is there are endless people in the political sphere who are so irrelevant right now because we, the people, have figured out what's really going on, as best we can anyway. And we're sifting through this information and we're doing whatever we need to do in order to, again, read between the lines as much as humanly possible. But these elected politicians, they're all panicking on the left and the right. I mean, they continue to bring up superficial examples of particular things in order to sort of pacify their constituents and keep them in good graces with the people who vote for them. That sort of leads me to this, and let me give you, again, another example. Even though this was something that Trump supported, I think there's a much longer-term plan regarding this budget resolution that was voted on the other day. And unfortunately, there were a lot of Republican representatives like Anna Paulina Luna, not her real name, but that she was one of these individuals who was saying, well, just like that, no tax on tips has passed. We just passed no tax on tips. It's not true. In fact, she ended up deleting that entire tweet, an X post, because she was wrong. So she either didn't read the bill, or she didn't understand it, or she's a liar. It's one of the three, or it's all three. But either way, this was John Harold, and he said the following on X. Why are we celebrating this? Have you guys actually read the budget resolution passed by Congress last night? He says, I did. It does not eliminate taxes on tips, overtime, or Social Security. It doesn't actually reduce the overall deficit and outlines a national debt of $55.5 trillion by year 2034. It instructs 7 committees to submit changes in laws within its jurisdiction to reduce the deficit by not less than a combined $2 trillion. It says, but at the same time, it also instructs 4 other committees to submit changes in laws within its jurisdiction that increase the deficit by not more than a combined $4.8 trillion. It says there are no actual tax changes. It simply says they will pursue policies, quote unquote, that lower taxes and reduce federal spending. And then he says he'll discuss it later on his show, which again, that's what it was. But it was going around that, well, no tax on tips has been passed. That's not true. But there is a bigger point in this also. And first of all, Thomas Massie, of course, voted no on this, and here's why. He said the following, quote, this is a tricky one. It's H-Con, House Con Resolution 14, not House Resolution. It says it's in a concurrent resolution that originates in the House, and it will require concurrence or passage by the Senate, but not the president's signature, as it is not law. It binds Congress, but not the people or the administration, so the president doesn't need to sign it. This H-Con Res is what is formally known as the budget and sets the parameters for the reconciliation bill that will be law signed by the president. It says, as Christina Bennett said, the reconciliation bill is not written yet. It will not be able to pass with 51 votes in the Senate, and it affects mandatory spending, about 70% of overall spending. There is no due date, quote unquote, for the reconciliation bill, since mandatory spending is on autopilot. It says the particular H-Con Res, aka budget, also sets broad parameters for the annual discretionary spending bill. Discretionary spending and other 30% of the budget is due every September 30th, but due to CR's kicking the can, the discretionary spending bill is due March 14th. It also hasn't been written yet. It should be 12 separate bills. It usually takes the form, of a combined bill called an omnibus, or 2 minibuses of some other bastard variation of what is actually supposed to be 12 bills. If discretionary spending runs out without being renewed, a so-called government shutdown results. Discretionary spending requires 60 votes in the Senate due to their rules. And then he says, here's the text of what passed last night, and then he has a link to it. Massey is right about the process, and he understands exactly what this is. What he's telling people is, no tax on tips is its own bill. All that, no tax on tips, no tax on this, no tax on that. That wasn't what was voted on the other night. Each of those specific parameters is something that has to be voted on separately, and that's what, again, Massey is basically just saying. It should be 12 separate bills. It shouldn't be thrown into one, again, half a month from now, in order to continue to fund the government. These need to become law and something that the president can sign off on and actually turn into countrywide law. So I understand Massey's take. He doesn't want to spend more money, and he doesn't want to spend more money than what we already have, and he doesn't want it going all the wrong places. It makes perfect sense. I fully get that. The interesting part about the military operation that's taking place right now and has been taking place right now is you can see, again, if you can make a comparison from everything that's taken place in the past, you can see that the individuals that have been selected by Trump, that some of them know what's going on and some of them don't. Or that the ones that didn't know what was going on beforehand about a military operation in our own government against the so-called deep state, that they have either figured this out because they've been told by Trump and the people around him, like the military, the good people in the military, or they figured it out on their own, or a combination of both. But you can also tell by some of the, what would you call it? Not rhetoric, but you can tell it by some of the behavior of some of the individuals that are around Trump. Trump is the most calm, and he's the most direct, and he's the one who's speaking the most, and he's dropping numerous hints all the time about a lot of different positive things. And then I would say there's J.D. Vance. I think J.D. Vance is in on it. I think he's privy to what's been going on. I think you have Howard Lutnick, who is new on the scene, and he knows what's going on. Dan Scavino, he's always been sort of behind the scenes with Trump. I would consider him to be one of Trump's right-hand men, so to speak, and he knows what's going on also. Stephen Miller, same thing. It's a very small group of individuals that are out in the public that know what's really taking place here. And there are a few others, like, again, Trump's envoy to overseas negotiations regarding a number of different deals. I've mentioned him in a previous episode, but my apologies, his name has slipped my mind. But again, he's just a former businessman that Trump brought in because Trump knew he could trust him. So there is an operation taking place here. I've rambled on about this, I think, long enough for now, but there is an operation going on. And again, as I've said before, one of the individuals that you can immediately see is sort of in the crosshairs and looks like he's been neutered is Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio used to be very loud about overseas affairs and yelling about war and so is a dictator and we have to do this and we have to do that. Marco Rubio looks like a deer in headlights now, and his mouth is closed. Basic nonverbal communication tells me that he's been updated as to what has really been going on. You also have to understand that he and John McCain were like two peas in a pod. And John McCain was largely responsible for these overseas false flags and uprooting of governments and overtaking of countries and the removal of peaceful leaders and all of this other stuff. John McCain was executed because John McCain was a traitor to this country. And we were told that in Q posts. That's why they referred to him as no name. We don't say his name around here. Trump used to say in his first go around. Well, we don't like to say his name, and we don't say his name. He was a traitor. He was executed for his crimes. He's been a traitor for a very long time. He had an oath to keep, and he didn't keep it. He just enriched himself, his family, and engaged in copious amounts of illegality. So Marco Rubio used to be friends with John McCain. McCain's dead, and Marco is being controlled by the short hairs now. And he's not saying a whole lot, which is, again, I think, rather telling. So Marco's been gotten to by the good guys is my overall point. In fact, there's two quick examples that just sort of summarize this, I think. First of all, it's basic human behavior. If you know somebody who is, and in particular, of course, if you've ever been a school teacher before, it's one of the signs when you can tell whether or not something, of course, is happening in a person's life is you see sort of a complete 180 in their behavior. They used to be loud, boisterous, outgoing, whatever, and then all of a sudden they aren't. That usually means that something has happened. You can see it in their face, you can see it in their mannerisms, you can see it again in their nonverbal communication. You can even hear it in the words that they use because they're basically saying the opposite of what they've always said. This is Marco Rubio now in a nutshell. We've never seen this Marco Rubio before. It's pretty astounding. And I hone in on him specifically, again, not just because he's always been a war hawk, but I used to live in Florida. And of course, he's always been a senator down there. So there's that aspect of it. I mean, I'm familiar with the dude's history. But with that said, inside of Q drops, on at least 6 occasions, 6 occasions, the phrase "learn our comms" pops up, which back in the day, and it dates back as late as 2018, it was brought to our attention that they, of course, were communicating with us a very particular way through the media and through the public. And that if you learn how they're communicating with people, you can pick up on a great deal of what they really mean, what they're really trying to get people to focus in on, and what might lie ahead. Let me give you an example. This was from Joe Lang on X, and he said the following, quote, and let me see when they said this. This is February 26th when they made this post. They said, "Trump is so brilliant. Did you catch what he did yesterday? It seems to have confused a lot of people, and the media doesn't know what to think about it either. What did Trump do? He announced that he's offering a new gold card as a $5 million path to citizenship. Did you catch the signal? Why is this so brilliant? Trump just told the world two things. Both go completely against the cabal's globalist agenda. Trump showed the world that he values American citizenship. He put that value at $5 million. No more invasions of illegal aliens. No more amnesty. No more open borders around the world. Trump is putting a value on citizenship, quote unquote. He's making citizenship, quote unquote, great again. Whoever takes the offer will be contributing to the wealth of the American people. But did you catch the other big signal? It's a gold card. Why is gold suddenly a big part of the narrative lately? Of course, Fort Knox, everything else. He says Trump just recently said that he wants to audit Fort Knox with Elon to make sure that the people's gold is still there. We all know how important that is. Gold shall destroy the Fed, quote unquote. That, of course, was at least one Q drop, and multiple, as a matter of fact. It says a return to the gold standard is coming, and Trump keeps signaling its return to the world. The days of fiat money are coming to an end. So is the central bank debt system. The enslavement of the people is going to end. And we return to sound money. There is nothing the cabal can do about it to stop any of it. Patriots in control, unquote. This is highly likely because this is a pattern. This is something that has been happening. With that said, running up the deficit, so to speak, does what to money? It makes it worthless. It makes cash worthless, which isn't a bad thing. Because while there's that immediate pinch of making cash worth less than what it's already worth, which isn't much, then you introduce gold, of course, into the conversation, and currency being backed by gold, then your dollar bill is not only worth something, it's worth more than what it's ever been worth in the history of forever, since we, of course, went off the gold standard. This, of course, leads to, quote unquote, ending the Fed and eliminating the Federal Reserve, which, as we all know, has no oversight, has operated as a Jewish globalist banking entity that can raise and lower interest rates whenever it sees fit in order to enslave everybody with usury. This, of course, can't happen anymore. Trump knows this. He's openly said it. I've played the audio on the show. Back in, again, even during the campaign, when he specifically brought up usury and saying, these laws are illegal. We can't have this in our country. He's slow rolling this for people, again, to start to figure out what's coming, rather than, again, screaming from a mountaintop, I decree that all of this is the case. Because the moment that he were to do something like that, people would scream dictator. Now, I understand. People would say, well, they're already screaming dictator at him. So, why not just scream it from a mountaintop and get it all over with and just arrest everybody in the blink of an eye? You don't want people taking to the streets more than they already have. You need to keep some people pacified and distracted with, useless bullshit. Let me give you one quick example. The left has nothing, of course, as we all know. I mean, they have no brains and they have no ability to critically think, let alone understand warfare. So what do they rely on then? They rely on socially engineered mass movements that are created by somebody else. For example, on Friday, February 28th, there's some boycott. A days-long boycott or something like that. Don't spend $1. Don't buy gasoline, don't buy food, don't buy this, don't buy that, don't buy a movie, don't listen, don't watch Netflix, don't do this, don't do that. What's funny is that the vast majority of Americans don't do any of those things anyway. But the left seems to think that they're going to penalize businesses by not purchasing particular products on a Friday. And then, of course, the joke is that, well, if they're not buying anything on a Friday, what are they going to do? They're just going to go out on Saturday and buy everything that they would maybe normally buy on a Friday, which means you're not doing anything. You're just a slave. You're just a socially engineered slave who's just, doing what strangers are telling you to do, rather than thinking for yourself and living your life. So that's all they have. And I'll get into that here again in just a minute when it comes to the education portion of the show, but it's pathetic. I mean, again, they have nothing but accusations and then, little grade school tricks that they try to play on people because they think that it's going to have some positive impact in their direction. Finally, again, regarding geopolitical things, you of course have a president in Romania who was highly conservative, certainly far-right, anti-communist, which is a good thing, and he's apparently been arrested. Why is this the case? I'm not sure, other than the fact that Romania is, of course, probably a deep state playground also, and you would certainly want to get rid of somebody and detain somebody who might have positive influence on some people who live there. I'm looking at it at face value. I don't know anything else about it other than to simply say that. Again, there was this from signofthetimes.com. And again, it was just titled Romanian Police Arrest Election Frontrunner and NATO Skeptic. And I can't pronounce his name. Georgescu, I think is his name. Either way, it's, it's the enemy showing their hand, one way or another. And of course, it doesn't look good when it comes to freedom, and it looks bad for communists. So there's that. But again, with that said, Donald Trump is going to be speaking to Congress on March 4th at 9 p.m. This is going to be an all-eyes-on thing. There will be lots of discussion as to what goes on during this speech and what is said and what is not said. And there's already, again, a lot of chatter online that after this particular speech, things are going to ramp up big time when it comes to declassifying things and other events taking place and other disclosure of factual information and real revelations, again, about what's going on. And this is going to be, it's going to be interesting, to say the least. So clearly, of course, because I record the day before I typically air, and things are moving at lightning speed, I'm not going to be able to get to anything that transpires that evening, I don't think. And then, of course, air it for Wednesday morning, but I'll certainly bring some information and some of my observations next Friday as to what goes on with that. But I think it's going to be entertaining. I also think this, and let me just sort of wrap up geopolitically with this, regarding all of the firings that you're seeing in the federal government and all of these federal government workers screaming at the top of their lungs about their jobs and, I was helping the government and this, that, and the other. These are the same people who complied with mask wearing and shot taking. These are the same people, again, who are injected with a poison that has killed their peers and their coworkers, and they don't know why. When more declassification continues to roll out, and when more individuals who worked for the government, past tense, worked for the government, because now they've been laid off for, of course, spending cuts, I think they're going to realize that working for the government was a bad idea. Because when they find out that working for the government was directly involved in child trafficking, whether they knew it or not, whether they were involved in it or not, I would hope that the human side of them would breathe a sigh of relief. That them being cut loose from government actually removes them from child trafficking and from doing all of the horrific things that politicians were responsible for, that yes, some of these employees were responsible for too, but many of them, of course, unwittingly. They actually thought that, the work that they were doing was going to help certain people. And I'm not saying that some of it wasn't, depending on the job. But a great deal of it was wrapped up in illegality, unbeknownst to them. The fact is that's going to be a huge red pill that they cannot avoid. They just won't be able to. And they might actually breathe a sigh of relief and actually close their mouths for a minute and have a little perspective and actually say, oh wow, I was working for an organization that was trafficking children and slaughtering them into the sex trade. And then, of course, killing them and chopping up their body parts and selling their organs. I had no idea any of this was happening. And they'll slow their roll a little bit, I think. But again, it is the child aspect of all of this that's going to bring a lot of people together. And that's happening right now. That's continuing to happen right now with lots of different revelations that are taking place. In fact, sliding right into education, let me play this very quickly. This continues to prove my point again that child trafficking is directly related to the Department of Education and other three-letter agencies, of course, if not all of them throughout government. And then, of course, every single time that there's a conflict or a war, there are displaced people and displaced children, and many of them, of course, are kidnapped and then sold into the sex trade. This is an individual, an Australian individual named Ali Tabrizi, if I'm saying that right. And he's specifically talking about, again, sex trafficking across the United States and across numerous countries. So give him a listen very quickly here in 3, 2, 1.
Why do so many men send dick pics on Facebook? 11. I'm like, what are you talking about? Who are your Facebook friends? She had 2,500 Facebook friends. And what the children do is whoever's got the most friends is the most popular, so they just accept everybody. And what the predators do is they will follow each other. And when one predator finds a child, all the predators bomb on. So I said to this kid, give me your password. I spent a couple of weeks bringing her Facebook friends list down. But what I was able to do with a pen and paper is map out the predators that were following each other. It took me a few days. And then map out one level down, only one level down of their friends, of who are the kids that they're following. So these are victims and potential victims. And in a few days, I could draw a map. And in these predators, they were from Australia, US, India, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. Predators were from all over the world. And then it suddenly dawned on me. Social media have within their power the ability to create an algorithm that could, in 1 squintillionth of a second, map out the full network of predators and map out the network of victims and potential victims and prevent the abuse from happening. And they deliberately choose not to. All these discussions about restricting children from social media, yada, yada, yada. No, there's one answer and there's one answer only. Send these people to jail.
It is the unfortunate part about a great deal of social media platforms, and it's not Gab, believe it or not. Andrew Torba and his team over there do a very good job of not having bots on their program and also not having pornographic honey traps, so to speak, on their program, let alone pornography. And unfortunately, there's pornography on X, and there always has been. A lot of these, disgusting individuals have X accounts, and and they put pictures of themselves online, and that's the way that it is. But one of the other aspects about X, which again makes it remarkably shady, unless of course it itself has been turned into a honeypot to catch very bad people, which is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible, but anytime you make a post on X, regardless of the post and regardless of what you're saying, it could just be something political, you'll almost always receive what Amazing Polly St. George calls a hobot. Your message will be liked by what she refers to as a hobot, which is this basically empty account with a screenshot of a woman wearing a bathing suit or whatever, and that's about it. And then, of course, if you were to ever click on their account to see who follows them or whatever, there's no followers. They have no followers, and they're not following anybody. So it's quite literally a bot account, a computerized account, either in an effort to fish a response from somebody who, has child trafficking on their mind or some other form of illegality on their mind, or there's another reason. Maybe the flip side of that coin is that it's to catch somebody. I really have no idea. But it is suspicious, and it is terrible, and it's disgusting. And yeah, again, like the guy said, these companies could shut that down in the blink of an eye if they chose to. We know, unfortunately, there's a lot of degenerate Jewish money that goes into these platforms also that allows those behaviors to continue to exist. Again, it's not on Gab, which, by the way, I do have to compliment Gab on one other thing. There are communist countries around the world, like Australia and even the UK and other countries in Europe, that have reached out to Andrew Torba and his team over at Gab because they're trying to get their citizens who are on Gab to get arrested for their online posts. But because Gab is an American company and foreign individuals use Gab as a place for freedom of speech, these individuals, by and large, if they're overseas, they're operating anonymously, and the governments that they live in the countries where they live, again, are trying to imprison these individuals, and so they want Gab to give up all that information on their citizens, and Andrew Torba is refusing to do so. They write him letters, they say, you need to give us the account of of anybody who's in, who's in our country, who's using your platform, and who is it, give us the real name and address of the person who has this account who said this. And Andrew Torba says, go F yourself. I'm not doing that. We're a free speech country. We have freedom of expression. If you don't, you need to change your ways. We're not going to capitulate to your communist, thuggery and whatever else, which is a good thing. And I'm glad that he's not complying with them and should, of course, not comply. Not ever. So, yeah. Hats off to Gab on that one. It's a great platform. It's a great place to, really communicate with people that are not computerized bots or honeypots or anything else. You'll get some real dialogue back and forth, which is good. So with that said, and with all of that aside, there's also this, of course, when it comes to, again, child trafficking, social engineering, and panic continuing to stir among the individuals who are dead asleep. At the University of Cincinnati the other day, their board of trustees was having a meeting about DEI and eliminating their DEI policies, or again, restructuring them or renaming them or whatever. Because as of Friday, the DEI timeline and the clock, the stopwatch on DEI stops on the 28th of February, 2025, which means you're going to start losing federal funding and people are going to start turning you in if you're not complying. And that's already happening. You already have American K-12 school boards across the United States that are being confronted by their citizens and saying, you need to get rid of these DEI policies or we are filing complaints against you through the Federal Department of Education's website and the Civil Rights Division of course, their website. And we're going to make sure that they know exactly what's going on here, what you're not complying with, so that you lose federal funding. And these people are panicking. Again, I'm recording this Thursday afternoon at, on February 27th. I guarantee right now, universities and K-12 schools are moving their asses as fast as humanly possible to comply with a lot of this. Or, again, they're panicking, like I said, and they're rewording things. But either way, every school board across the United States needs to be confronted about complying with the civil rights laws that exist in this country. That has to happen. I should mention this also geopolitically. The Pentagon has just gotten rid of and basically put out a memo saying, we're getting rid of all of our tranny soldiers. If you're in the military and you're a tranny, you have 30 days to find another job. That's it. Again, stroke of a pen, order from the person in charge, of course, Pete Hegseth, military behind him, a number of individuals, of course, Donald Trump. It's game over. This is one of the beautiful things that does exist in our country, is that we do vote for this. This is what was always supposed to happen. A president of the United States or a person running for that position tells the people, I'm going to do this. And then you vote for that person, and then that person does it. That means that every three-letter agency and everybody under the purview of the President of the United States has to do it. And that's not been the way it's been done in the past. These three-letter agencies have been running their own show from every past president, because every past president has been a criminal of the highest order. They've been a part of the deep state cabal for a very long time, and tied in with the Jewish lobby, of course, and the bankers for a very long time. But we're actually seeing this take place now for the first time in our lifetimes, the way that it's supposed to actually be done. And you can hear this also, I might add, with Donald Trump's cabinet members. They're all saying the same thing. They did it in the cabinet meeting just the other day. We work for the president. The president tells us what to do. If he wants something done, we do it. It's that simple, because that's how it's supposed to be. In the past, it's just been a show, but now it's actually the real deal. And now you're seeing these universities and K-12 schools do the things that they never had to do in the past because they were allowed to get away with all of it. So I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic what's going on here. Now let me play this, because this is hilarious. just as a quick review to refresh everybody's memory. You recall me, of course, consistently bringing up Westerville City Schools in central Ohio. Large school district. Their levy failed back in November. They were lying to the public saying they didn't have the money and they needed the levy. Again, they were lying to everybody. They had the money. They had to make cuts because that's what you're supposed to do first, is you make cuts and you use a levy as a last-ditch resort. They didn't, of course. They're completely ridiculous and completely unhinged, and they do everything that they do to basically gaslight the public to put a levy out in front first as a first resort, not a last. Anyway, one of the citizens in the town called them out on all of this throughout the entire time and said that he's working against the levy to make sure that the levy doesn't pass. Well, the levy didn't pass. They all panicked and said, well, hell, now we have to actually do our job. And the superintendent, of course, started to make cuts. While they're making cuts, they're also, of course, finding money, because that's what happens when you make cuts. So they have found at least $4.5+ million. Not to mention, they consistently receive donations, and that donation total, of course, for the fiscal year increases. Now, based on the current fiscal year, their donation total has gone up to $236,300 and change. So they have money. And this is, again, the hypocritical part about their business. What's interesting, though, and this is where it ties back even into Doge, and it ties back into other geopolitical happenings that are taking place right now. And again, it's going to test your recall. But you recall me bringing up Brockton, Massachusetts, and that school district. Again, very famously hitting the news by saying, the violence is out of control in our school district, and we need the National Guard here for, crowd control because of all of these minority students not going to class and standing around and engaging in bullying and XYZ. That wasn't really the problem. That was a huge problem, but that of course wasn't the largest. Everybody knows that the largest problem with a school district is money and money mismanagement. So as I was watching these board meetings, that's of course what ended up happening. They started lifting the veil and opening up all the financial books, and they went, holy shit, look at all this wasteful money. Look at all these open grants. Look at all this grant money that still is flowing to individuals, and they don't even work here anymore, and there's actually no project building taking place. And now the district is on the hook for paying back the companies for this, for these transactions, and they don't have the money. Because all of these, these operations are still, these contracts are still open. So that's happening at a K-12 school. And that's happening in the federal government. Big picture, small picture, large location, small location, macro, micro. This is the breakdown of everything that's taking place. Make no mistake, this is happening in every American university and school district. This is the contagion, and it's also the cure. The contagion has always been money mismanagement and overspending on nothing. The cure is you're getting caught now, and now you have to rework things, and now you have to tighten the belt, and now you have to get rid of things that don't belong. This is happening across our entire nation. Companies are doing this also. They're cleaning house from all the nonsense that they've been, of course, dealing with this entire time. And as you've heard me say in the past before, all these companies that made all these DEI hires, the moment that they're told that they don't have to, those are the people they cut loose first. And they do them all at once. They say, well, we brought all of you in, but we have to make some cuts. This is a business decision. We've been told this by our higher-ups. We apologize, but you're all let go. Here's a little severance package, and here's your remainder check, so to speak. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Have a nice day. And then they're gone. Because they never should have hired him in the first place. My point is this is happening across the board. And now, the public is even calling these people out. So in Westerville City Schools, the guy who was calling the individuals out and the board members out for their money mismanagement and their stupidity on all of this. His name is Doug Krinsky. I'm going to play his audio from earlier this week in their board meeting, and he shreds them. Keep in mind, the board limited the amount of time that public individuals can speak at the lectern from 5 minutes down to 3. The other irony about this is that 2 women spoke before Doug Krinsky, and they were in this other group of women that were all there to advocate for not firing an elementary school, middle school, ELA teacher's aide that, again, works 5 days a week for the district as an aide when it comes to being a translator for students who can't speak English. That's a whole nother can of worms, as you might imagine, but it's ironic that they claim that school districts claim to love illegal aliens and they want to accommodate all these students. And then they whine about not having money, and then they find all this money, but then they want to get rid of an aide who makes next to $0, who apparently has also said that they're fine working 4 days a week instead of 5 if it saves the district more money. Point being, calling out a school board's hypocrisy and a school district's hypocrisy is as easy as flushing a toilet. It takes 0 effort. And it has to be done. It has to be something, again, that the public does to school boards to their faces. So give Doug a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. Before I actually say what I'm going to say, I think that's another example of why you need to go back to 5 minutes for each speaker. Just food for thought. But my points go back to the original 4.0, since I can't use names. Somebody was talking about budget, the wine, blah, blah, blah. So when we did public forums last fall, we talked about how poorly the grades were for all the students. So now that the levy's over, you've saved $8 million a year annualized, transferred back to $30 million. What I don't understand is, why are all the comments about budget? Why aren't they about getting the grades up for all the kids? So I'm sort of missing the whole thing about, we're going to put a levy up, you're not going to put a levy up. Now you're talking about state budget. I'm confused. Where's the talk about helping the kids? Like what I just heard? The kids need help. Let's help the kids. But as long as you're going to talk about budget, let's talk about a couple things. So you say the state pulled $4 million last year. You also picked up $2.7 million, which you continue to not bring up, that you didn't have the year before based on real estate reevaluations. So you didn't just lose 4, you picked up 2.7 million. And that'll probably happen again in 3 years again. So there you go. Also, before the levy was voted on, you said there was no more cost savings to be found. You had done that. There wasn't any more to be found. Interesting how after the levy was defeated, you found $8 million a year in savings. Interesting how that happens. Also, why don't we do something like hire an auditor to internally analyze every penny that's being spent in the district and look for duplication, overlap of jobs and job descriptions. Because as I remember from the numbers looking last fall, the administrative area went up $4 million in 1 year during COVID. So to me, whatever was added probably needs to be removed because it was either a one-time thing or there's a duplication going on in the admin area. So that's another area for opportunity. The last thing I want to do is point out that you continue to bring up residents should help you advocate for state funding. Well, I'm one citizen I know none of you like, which, okay, that's fine. But I did offer right after the levy was defeated that I would help you go to the State House, advocate if we could come up with goals we all agreed to. I wouldn't do it if you're going to put another levy up. And I know a couple of you didn't like that. That's fine. That's just, I only have so much time. I'm not going to do everything. So since you are not putting a levy up, I would have thought somebody would have extended their hand back to me and say, Doug, could you help us down at the State House? But the only response I got on my initial offer was, read our presentation, you figure out what the priorities are, because I asked for your priorities, but you didn't tell them to me. So you asked for help, I offered to help, and yet it didn't happen. So I'm confused about what you guys are doing. And since my 3 minutes are up, I'm done. Thanks.
He's 100% right on every account. He's right on everything. They asked for help. He offered to help. They keep telling everybody, like every single school board, by the way, across the entire United States all got the same memo. They all got the same memo to go to their state governments and start begging for money. Please rework your state legislation so that public schools get more money. Don't defund public schools. Help us, help us. The only thing that school boards know is mob rule, or attempted mob rule, by getting the public again to join the school board members at the state level and at the state houses, and then, walk around and beat on doors and have conversations and whatever else. And then at the exact same time yell that state representatives are immovable on all of this, and then they won't budge. So it's a losing battle no matter which way you slice it. But he makes an excellent point when he talks about auditing, which, by the way, you can pay attention very quickly to the fact that these school board members don't even know what that means. Because he wasn't talking about auditing from a standpoint of making sure that money goes to the right people at the right time. That's one kind of auditing. The kind of auditing that he's calling for is a Doge kind of auditing, which is make sure that you're not paying two people to do the same thing that one person can do. But unfortunately, the school board didn't understand him because they're not that bright. So what was their response at the end when they went around the horn and they started again covering their own asses like they always do? They looked at the treasurer and they said, just for clarification, because we heard a comment about auditing from one of the members of the public, aren't we audited every year? And she goes, yes, we are. We're audited every year and we've passed every audit. In fact, we receive awards all the time for being audited. And the auditors give us awards all of the time. In fact, we're due to probably receive another auditing award this year. That's their justification for being audited. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about don't double dip. Don't have two people or two departments doing the same thing that one person or one department could be doing. Which means you're quite literally cutting 50% of what you have going on right now. He, of course, also brought up the COVID scam and how administrative costs increased by $4 million during the COVID scam. Yes, because they all gave themselves raises with COVID money because they're robbing people. Your tax dollars went to school building administrators to increase their pay, and that happened across the entire United States. It's the world's largest K-12 education university money laundering operation that's ever taken place in the history of our country. COVID, the COVID scam. It's unbelievable. And yeah, they hired more administrators, unnecessarily, because they had this newfound cash that they, thought they'd always be able to have. Joke's on them, now they got to give it back. And if they didn't give it back, they're losing it through basic state funding. They're so flippin' stupid. It's unimaginable how dumb these people are. It's incredible. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. That was the only sort of education revelation that I wanted to bring to people's attention, other than the fact, of course, the DEI clock is officially run out and people are panicking, which again is a good thing. I'm going to link it in the description below again. The website where you can go to file a formal complaint through the Office of Civil Rights against school board members, superintendents in school districts, and of course university and college settings if they don't comply. Anybody can make these filings. Again, employees can make these filings, and they should. You're at the ground level. You're seeing this in the hallways. You're seeing this in your buildings. If they're not complying, if they're not getting rid of their DEI coordinators and their DEI presentations and all that bullshit, then yes, you have to go after these people. The threat of losing federal funding is going to be incredible. And they don't think they'll lose it, which means when you call them out on it, and you have individuals inside of the actual working environment finally being courageous for the first time in their miserable lives, and turning on the people around them and saying, you're not taking down your queer flags, you still have a DEI department in the district office, you're still employing these people and paying them tens of thousands of dollars to do absolutely nothing. You have to call these people out. And the easiest way to do that is just to turn them in. So again, I will include that in the description below. In fact, as I wrap up this episode, a watered-down version of some information has been released regarding Epstein's files, or the Epstein files. Again, I jumped on an X space just very quickly to listen into it. They're all just bouncing around arguing about why it was given to a bunch of gatekeepers. It's not valuable information. Most of us already know about Epstein. We already know the connections. What's the one thing that people really want to see? They want to see a video of somebody that is famous, that they know or are familiar with, doing something horrible to a kid. I hate to put it that way, but that's really the full-blown evidence. Again, a person's name on a flight log doesn't mean a whole lot. A person's name on a flight log multiple times, well, that's interesting. But a person, an actual video of a person, in particular a politician or a celebrity, engaging in a horrific act with a child, ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to be released to the public. And that's stone cold proof. It's just stone cold proof. Now, I've brought this up before, a long time ago. But back in the days before I had this show here, again, I was on the internet anonymously. And I was bouncing around Vote, back when Vote used to be the old Vote. And, and some of these other deeper websites, again, doing a lot of research and just finding a lot of information about things that were going on. I came across a particular video that was directly linked, and it was said that it was Epstein. So I clicked on it, and it was a guy who looks just like Jeffrey Epstein, so it probably was him. And it was a video of him torturing a teenage girl. I remember the video. I'll briefly describe it. It was clearly warm weather outside. It was a grass field. It could have been his island. I'm not sure, but it certainly looked like him. And it was crystal clear, actually. It wasn't even like hazy video. And he had this girl naked, and she was tied to the ground with rope and stakes. Out, again, spread eagle, basically. And he was burning her with a magnifying glass by shining the sun through the magnifying glass and burning parts of her body. It was awful. And again, someone would say, well, why did you watch that? Well, I didn't watch the whole thing because I'm not a psycho. But I watched enough of it to get a grasp of what it was. And then I got off of it. And I couldn't even tell you the website where it existed, nor the link that I used to have that certainly went to it. In fact, back in the day, it was a link that was in the description below a YouTube video. So, I mean, that should tell you something about YouTube and what they do with information these days and what they used to do with information back in the day. But, that's not something you forget. But that's the kind of information that is not going to be released on X from individuals with massive X handles, like Rogan O'Handley and Chaya Rachik, libs of TikTok, and Mike Cernovich and Liz Wheeler and these other people. It's about video evidence. And video evidence has to be used either in a court of law or a military tribunal. It's not going to be released to the public. So everybody again screaming like, I've got the list, I've got things, look at this and blah, blah, blah. If any information is released to the public, it's going to be just superficial names, phone numbers, again, call logs, email addresses, flight logs potentially. That'll be about it. Because if you're going to bring these people down, you can't release information that's going to be used in a court, let alone a military tribunal, to the public. You just can't do it. So, deep breath on all the, D-class revelations of this, that, or the other. I mean, everybody just needs to take a deep breath and control what you can control and not get wrapped up in all the, all the hype and the hoopla. It's it's such low-hanging fruit, and it's exhausting, and it's stupid. And these people are really doing it just for, again, to either piss off the mainstream media and make, again, evil people panic, or, make evil people double down and take to the public sphere again and deny any wrongdoing or deny any involvement. It'll be interesting to see again what Alan Dershowitz says here in the future. He'll probably come out of the cracks and deny any wrongdoing. But if he can even be reached, if he's even still alive, who's to say? But this is the kind of stuff, again, where it's carrot stick stuff, and people need to just sort of back away from it because it doesn't matter. We already know the Jewish connection between all of it. We know it's government, we know it's politicians, we know it's entertainers, we know it was a Jewish honey trap from the start, and we know that they were sacrificing children and catching them on video doing these things and having sex with kids and everything else. We already know this. We just want everybody to see it because we know that it's on tape. But like I said, to come full circle again and back around again, that's not going to be released to the public, not until, again, a conviction has been made, and then somebody does a FOIA for all of the evidence. Only then will you actually see the truth of any of it with your own eyes. But again, if you want to get on the FBI Vault website, you can. And you can type in Jeffrey Epstein, and yeah, there's all kinds of documents that pop up. Bunches of them. They're not new. They've been on the FBI Vault website for a very long time, since at least 2016. So, there you go. I'll leave it there. Trust me, I'll have more for next week. I already do have more. I just don't want to drag on too much longer here. Either way, with that said, have a great weekend, everybody. Again, pay attention to what people do now. Always pay attention to what they're saying and what they're not saying, because that's really where a lot of the truth exists. And those who scream the loudest have the most to hide. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll catch you on Monday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.